Rock and our Redeemer. Amen. Today, I just thought of meditating on three characters in the Bible as small children, right? To show how they had been reared up by their mothers and fathers, how they had been nurtured in the Christian values at home. So we don't find any reference to the mothers, but only the children are presented there. I thought I would just take four characters actually, if time permits, otherwise three. In Genesis 22nd chapter, 6 to 9, we read about Abraham, Isaac, the son of Abraham, who was put to a test of faith. Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, Auntie.
Who was put to a test of faith. And here we find the boy being, hardly he would have been a teenager by then, but we find that he was calm and composed when he knew that his father was taking him to Mount Moriah. In the beginning, he did not know. He thought he was accompanying his father to make a sacrifice on Mount Moriah. But then he had his own doubts because the firewood was there, but the lamb was missing. And he asked his father, Father, where is the lamb? And we find that in Genesis 22. Genesis 22, verses 6 to 9. Abraham took the wood for the burnt offering and placed it on his son Isaac, and he himself carried the fire and the knife. As the two of them went on together, Isaac spoke up and said to his father Abraham, Father, yes, my son, Abraham replied. The fire and wood are here, Isaac said, but where is the lamb for the burnt offering? Abraham answered, God himself will provide the lamb for the burnt offering, my son. And the two of them went on together. When they reached the place God had told him about, Abraham built an altar there and arranged the wood on it. He bound his son Isaac and laid him on the altar on top of the wood. Then he reached out his knife and took the knife to slay his son. But the angel of the Lord called out to him from heaven and said not to sacrifice his son, and he showed him a lamb that had been caught in the thicket. So here we find he was his only son given after the great promise was given to Abraham. But then, how did this son, a teenager who should be bubbling with enthusiasm, was calm and composed, and he allowed his father to be tied up? His hands were tied, and he was laid on the altar. It's just unimaginable, the kind of obedience that we see in Isaac. At the point of death, he knew that he was going to be sacrificed. First, he didn't understand, but later he knew when his hands were tied that he was going to be the sacrificial lamb. But then he never resisted, he never ran away. He complied with what his father had asked him to do. Something very surprising. It's just unbelievable. That shows how the boy had been nurtured. Perhaps he had seen his mother being obedient to his father. The father's faith and the father's obedience to God might have propelled him to take up this particular task in a very composed manner. It's something very amazing. Suddenly it struck me. And so I was just impressed by the character of Isaac at a very young age. And then we find how God delivered him there. And he is almost a forerunner or a shadow of Jesus himself, being obedient to his father to the point of sacrificing his own life on the cross that we read in Hebrews 5. Someone has taken the portion could read it. Hebrews 5. I'm sorry, Hebrews 2, 5 to 11. 5 to 11. So here it is said that he humbled himself to the extent of dying on the cross, taking up the death on the cross. And this is what, and so God lifted him up to the heavens. You find that in, it is not the angels that he has subjected the world to come, which we are speaking, but there is a place where someone has testified, what is mankind? You're mindful of them, a son of man that you care for him. You made them a little lower than the angels. Then coming a little lower down, God left nothing that is not subject to him. I'm sorry, I've taken the wrong reference, I think. Could you find me the place, please? Right. Yes, I'm sorry. It's from 8 onwards, if you could read. 9, 9. But we do see Jesus, who was made lower than the angels for a little while, now crowned with glory and honor because he suffered death so that by the grace of God, he might taste death for everyone. So here he lowered himself, he humbled himself to the extent of taking up the death on the cross. And so he is almost a forerunner of Jesus or a shadow of Jesus. So this shows what a lot of spiritual nurturing has gone into the making of Isaac while he grew up as a boy. So that credit goes to the parents, Abraham and Sarah. Next, we come to another important character whom we find in a little boy who is found in Mark. I think it is Mark. I'm sorry. The next character is Second Kings. Second Kings, 5th chapter. We are all familiar with that story. Second Kings, 5th chapter, that which speaks about the great commander of the army of King of Aram. And he was a great man. He was a well-known man, a valiant man, but he was stricken with leprosy. And we find here now the bands of raiders, second 5:2, raiders from Aram had gone out and had taken captive a young girl from Israel, and she served Naaman's wife. She said to her mistress, so here she had gone there as a slave girl who has to work for Naaman's wife. So that was the position of this young girl. Here it says young girl, NIV. In another version, it says a small girl. So here, this girl also must be a very small girl, perhaps in her teens, right? So what did she? She had been observing her master for some time, but then she says, if only my master would see the prophet who's in Samaria, he would cure him of his leprosy. Then only that place that girl is mentioned, only in one verse that girl is mentioned here without a name. Immediately, Naaman, perhaps his mistress would have told Naaman, and Naaman immediately took the matter to the king of Aram, who immediately gave a letter to the king of Israel. See what a long process and a very serious process a small girl's um, information turns to be. So then the king of Israel, so he goes to the king of Israel, taking this letter from king of Aram, and there we find that he was asked to cure him of his leprosy. Then this king is really in distress because he thinks that this is a vain excuse for the king of Aram to come against the king of Israel. And so he is really worried. At that time, Elisha, the king of Samaria, sends for him and he says, there is a prophet in Samaria. You send him to me. So he thinks, this great man, being a great commander, thinks that he was going to come out and pay his respect to the commander and touch him, and immediately he's going to be healed. That was his expectation. But then, quite contrary to his expectation, he didn't even come out. Um, he sent his follower to say, go wash in the Jordan 7 times. So Naaman was really angered by these words. And then he said, are there not rivers in Damascus? Why should I do that? Then the other servants tell him he was completely cured of his leprosy. And we find him completely surrendering himself to the God of Israel. And he says, I will not worship any other God. And he takes an excuse saying, if my Lord goes into the temple, I may have to accompany him. He says, all right, go ahead. So here we find a small girl finds relief to such a great man. Perhaps that was the reason why this girl had found a place in the house of Naaman. So we do not know what God's plans are going to be. Sometimes his plans, why should this girl? And what is so remarkable about this girl? This girl had just come over there. She's a slave girl to work in the house of Naaman. But I imagine that this girl should have shown exceptional qualities of piety, praying at a particular time, or she should have been a very humble girl, very sincere in her work, and she should have captured the heart of her mistress. That's why, as soon as this girl gives this advice, immediately it is being taken up by the mistress and then by Naaman himself up to the king. And God's plan is also there. But this girl should have won the, the confidence of her mistress. Otherwise, she wouldn't have done it. It wouldn't have been so successful a event. So here we find a small girl. She should have been nurtured in the Christian values, and she should have been nurtured by her mother or her father to take the gospel, or to take the to tell the world who is the real God. Yahweh is the real God. She is living in a foreign land as a slave, but she had the courage to stand for God, the real God. And the flame within her was that these people who did not know the real God must come to know the real God. And she was also interested in Naaman being healed of his leprosy. She had such faith, infinite faith in the prophet of Samaria, that she boldly recommends him to Naaman. So these exceptional qualities you find in elderly people. But here, this small girl, being a slave girl, she didn't have any fear about her master. She wasn't worried about her own life, but all that she wanted was to proclaim her God in a foreign land. So she had been trained that way. So here, she makes a real impression on the readers. And then we go on to another character. Do we have time? Yes, Jen. Can I take 5 more minutes?
Please, Auntie.
Okay.
Yeah.
Another character is in John 6, 6th chapter of John. We all know about that character also. He is also a nameless boy. 6th chapter, 8 to 11. 8 to 11, where Jesus is found to be, he's talking to the people and sermonizing to the people, and a large crowd had connected, and it's growing very dark. The village is far away, and they have to feed the people. The disciples say, all right, let us send them away. But he says, no, give them something to eat. They say, what is it that we can give them? There are about 500 men alone in that place. Then he says, Andrew, so Jesus asked them to go and find out what is available. And Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, comes and tells him, verse 9, here is a boy with 5 small barley loaves and 2 small fish, and how far will they go among so many? So Jesus said, have the people sit down. So here we find again that boy is not mentioned. Only one place, one verse that boy is being mentioned. And then we know about the miracle that happened. Jesus blessed it, and all the people ate of it, and they gathered about 12 basketfuls of the leftover. This is a real miracle that had happened. But then that's something remarkable about this boy. He should have been a small boy, because here it's mentioned as a boy. And another version, it is mentioned as a small boy. So this mother should have given him a lunch, perhaps only for himself. And the boys of his age would definitely, when they were searching, when they were going around the crowd asking for food, naturally the tendency of this small boy would be to hurry up and gulp everything, because he won't be having anything to eat if he's going to give it to the next person. That would be the natural tendency. But here this boy is very, very different. And we find he is offering it. He didn't know. He didn't probably realize that this small amount of the food that he's giving is going to turn out to be a big miracle. But when it was asked of him, immediately he had the mind to share it with whomsoever he wanted to. So this is something, a rare quality that is found among children. So here, the boy had been trained up in such a way. It doesn't come all of a sudden. It doesn't crop up. This kind of a good quality cannot crop up all of a sudden. This boy had been trained by his parents to share his belongings with others, to share his food stuff with others, to share perhaps whatever he had with others who really needed it. And so the miracle did happen, and God blessed it. And when it was served, 5,000 people ate of it, and the leftovers were gathered in 12 baskets. So something amazing how this little boy had been playing. We don't know whether the mother had accompanied him, or he came with his friends, or whether he came with his relatives. Nothing is known about the boy, but this wonderful character of sharing comes in. So from this, we come to know about the parents who had trained these children. In English, there's a proverb. It says, tell me who your friend is and I'll tell you who you are. Similarly, we learn about these characters, and through them, we know about nurturing that the parents have given to these little children. And one other, as contradictory character, I bring it, Mark 6, 17 to 29, which speaks about Herodias. Herodias was the wife of Philip, and Herod was having an illegal relationship with his brother's wife. And John the Baptist very clearly pointed out this immorality in Herod. But this enraged Herodias. She was waiting to take her revenge. She has lodged it in her heart, and she was waiting to take revenge on John the Baptist. So when Herod's birthday came, This girl danced, and Herod was well pleased. He called her, he appreciated her. He asked her what she wanted. Immediately, she came running to the mother and asked her, "What should I ask of Herod?" She said, "Ask for John the Baptist's head in a platter." Look at this mother in contrast with the unknown mothers, the unknown heroines of the previous three characters. We find what will this girl turn out to be? She will turn out to be a murderess. She will turn out to be a wicked person, because that is what is being nurtured into the young heart of this girl. So this is almost a character study of 4 characters. And how are we? I know for sure that we take real interest in the children, in nurturing the right values, in giving them opportunities for sharing it with others, and so on. So our children are definitely going to be useful for society and pleasing to God in all respects, because every mother takes great pains to nurture the right values in the children. So may God bless all the efforts of all the mothers over here who spend time with the children to nurture the right values in them. And thank you for the opportunity given to me, a word of prayer. Loving Heavenly Father, we thank you for these wonderful characters who have shown Christian values, because their parents nurtured these wonderful values in them. Father, help us never to miss a chance to cater into these little ones the right values you expect of them. Let them grow up to be great leaders, pleasing in thy sight, doing your work. And Father, let them become spreaders of the gospel of Christ. We ask this in the precious